everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We know it's been a crazy few days of conversations and sessions, so we're grateful you had a little more energy for us, and we're excited to share some of our workforce research with you all. My name is Kerry McKittrick. I'm one of the directors of the Project on Workforce at Harvard. I'm here with my fellow co-director, Nathalie Gazzaneo, and we are joined by the wonderful Eleonora Brandimarti from the Business School's Reskilling Lab, and David Shacklette from the Kennedy School Skills Lab. So you can see a trend here. The Project on Workforce is a collaboration between the Education School, the Business School, and the Policy School. So the same silos that exist in practice also exist in research, and we're trying to break those down and really create applied research that will generate actionable insights for leaders. So there's kind of one key theme that ties all of our work together here, and it's building better pathways to economic mobility. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our research around navigating those pathways. I'm going to pass it to Eleonora and Nathalie to talk about what some of those skilling programs may look like. And then David's going to close us out with a conversation about durable skills and how we might measure them. Then we'll have a discussion and hopefully have time for one or two questions, but we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to start off with a conversation about career navigation because we recently released a report, and this is one of our strands of work, and we have a new upcoming study that I'll talk about a little bit. But I first kind of want to ground us in the data, and that's 44% of US workers are low-wage workers. And the majority of these individuals do not have a college degree. They are women and people of color are overrepresented. And many people who enter a low-wage job become trapped in what we call kind of a low-wage cycle. So individuals in low-wage jobs, when surveyed 5 years later, tend to still be in either the same job or another low-wage job that does not have a path to advancement. And so we think one of the solutions to this kind of low-wage trap, to this lack of alternative pathways beyond a college degree, is a system of career navigation that helps individuals find and capitalize on training and job opportunities. So we conducted a literature review and landscape scan. We did combined academic and field research in partnership with the National Fund at Workforce Solutions. And we scoped the field of career navigation, and to our knowledge, this is the first time this has been done, and so we hope that we're going to build a field. All of you will join us in kind of this research and this practice. And we define career navigation in three buckets, the first of which is acquiring knowledge about yourself and your environment, so your own skills and values, and then the labor market, what education and job opportunities. The second piece is planning or pathway mapping. And then the third piece is integrating and putting those actions together. So combining education and job opportunities, training opportunities to enable progress. And I think we all know as we think about our own career paths that this is a disjointed process, and it's intensely personal, but it's also very structural. And so we, through our research, identified kind of 5 core drivers or levers that we believe impact, and the research shows, impact how an individual navigates their career. And that's information accuracy and access, social capital skills, particularly durable skills, which David will talk about, as well as navigation skills like adaptability and career management and decision-making. The third piece is kind of wraparound supports and guidance and finances that kind of break down some of those barriers to navigating pathways. And then the last piece is really the structures and the policies, the environment, the culture that can present obstacles or enable people to succeed. And so based on this research, we were able to develop a series of recommendations, and some of our team will go into the training recommendations, but I just want to point out that this really is an ecosystem effort, we think, with an ecosystem, a problem and a solution. And so employers have a role, educators have a role, policymakers have a role. And so we really hope that to build a systemic solution, and the programs around the edges really aren't going to solve this, folks come together. And so we reviewed some of the programs that are out there. We found that the evidence is strongest around programs and services that address all of the 5 drivers I mentioned earlier, like career coaching, as well as some of the intensive kind of holistic programs like the Year Ups, which combine networking and pathways and experiential learning. And, but we think there needs to be a lot more research around some of the other things that are out there, like mentoring, like some of the pathway tools that are developing that are really innovative, but I think the research hasn't caught up yet. And so one space that I'll just highlight, our next project, which we're really excited about, is diving into the information piece, because we found that everyone kind of acknowledges, a lot of the literature acknowledges that information is important. We need to have accurate information about opportunities, about wages, about advancement potential, but we don't quite understand how people acquire that information, how they use it, what resonates, what's useful. We have some hypotheses. But over the next few months, we're going to be doing probability panels of community college students and low-wage workers to understand their use of information and understand what resonates. And hopefully, we think this will inform practitioners, the programs that are conducting outreach to individuals in these communities, the folks who may be here working on some of the tools. How do we make sure we reach the communities we want to serve? And so with that, given our time, I'm going to pass it now to my colleague Eleonora to talk about some of what employers can do in this space.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kerry. Thank you all for being here. It's such a privilege to bring some of what we do in academia outside of academia. So I'm a researcher at the Digital Reskilling Lab, which is part of the D-Cube Institute at Harvard Business School. And the problem we are trying to think about is one really about how digital and technological transformations affect work. We know that technological transformations are one of the main drivers of pulls in the labor force, and this is really being accelerated recently with AI. So what I mean by this is that recent projections by the OECD and the World Economic Forum are telling us that up to 37% of jobs in the US are going to be deeply affected by digital transformations. And worldwide, we have about 300 million jobs that are directly going to be affected by AI. So this is really a question of skill obsolescence. On one hand, we have workers whose jobs are changing. Some people will lose and some people will win from it. And as institutions, we have an obligation to make sure that people are not losing from this whole process, and that technology and workers can act as complements and not substitutes. So what can we do? Well, reskilling is one of the policies that can help us address these frictions. And in particular, reskilling is specific training to move people horizontally from one job, one skill set to another. And again, to give some numbers, projections tell us that about 1 billion people worldwide will need to be reskilled in the near future. So not just do we need to get right what works, but we also need to make it scalable and accessible to the widest number of people possible. So at the Digital Reskilling Lab, we focus on 2 big questions. The first is trying to close the knowledge gap. We have seen that organizations and institutions over the years have been investing more and more in reskilling. However, the research is really, really starting up right now. We don't know what's going on. So at the Reskilling Lab, we try to record and analyze the initiatives that already exist and learn from them in an organic way, understand what frictions there are, and so on. Then there's a big problem of the implementation gap and trying to close that. So how can we go from what works at a small level to scale it up, basically? What can we do to ensure that organizations that are implementing these programs have a positive ROI and are investing their money in a good way? So our lab is a baby. It's only 2 years old. In research terms, this is a very, very short time. However, we have already discovered some interesting things that I'm happy to share with you guys, both from the organization's perspective and from the learner's perspective. So from the organization's perspective, we learned that organizations that are successfully investing in reskilling have a top-down approach. And what I mean by that is that we do see that it's not only the job of HR to think about reskilling, but it's really a joint effort of the whole C-suite. If this kind of coordination does not happen at the top, it's really hard to see it at the bottom of the organization. The second thing that we are documenting and are investing a lot of our research time in is understanding the role of managers. Line managers are basically the key to the workers. They have, among the many things that line managers do, they're also the ones who are in charge with matching workers with training, and they're the ones who know your workers the best and everything. So getting them involved in the conversation and especially aligning their interests with the organization's interests is crucial. Because what happens otherwise? Well, we do have a problem of talent hoarding. And this is when the manager's incentives are misaligned with the organizations. So they prefer short-term workers who are working in the short term rather than training, which is a long-term objective. And that's something that definitely, as organizations, we can act upon and get right. Then on the learner side, what we learned is that, again, incentives matter when it comes to technological adaptation. Getting workers' incentives is crucial to making sure that adaptation works. And again, the cost of this, if this isn't done right, is slack in the organization, which has, again, a high price tag for organizations. Finally, I want to really put forward what we have learned about the learner. And while in traditional educational institutions, the learner is at the center, this is not obviously the case in organizations, and there are many design features that should be taken into account to put the learner back at the center of the program. And these can be things as simple as guaranteeing that these people have childcare while they're learning, or adapting their work. Their work hours to these programs. So I want to conclude with what we are planning to do moving forward. So we are interested in two broad questions right now. The first one is how can we train people for Gen AI? And the objective of this is really to make sure that workers and technology work as complements together. And then the second question that we are really focused on is about how do we scale up this whole operation, which is, I guess, the billion-dollar question right now. So, Nathalie.
Thank you, Eleonora. Thank you, everyone. So Eleonora's talk really complements mine, and you see like the connecting points. But we know that training that happens on the firm is really important. Broader than that, we know that college and traditional degrees, they are a proven pathway to economic mobility, but they do not tell the whole story. So the project I'm going to talk to you now, one of our projects at the Project on Workforce is called the Workforce Almanac. And we looked into data again, and we saw that both the relevance and the demand for shorter forms of workforce training is increasing in the US. And we know that there exists an infrastructure for that. As Eleonora was saying, on the job training is part of that infrastructure, but there is like even more than that. And we were really curious to understand where is this infrastructure, what it looks like, and how it's serving different American communities, different people in the US and in the territory. And then we tackled these big questions as part of of our work on the Workforce Almanac and its open data portal. As part of this story and as part of this work, we brought together to one picture types of training providers that are usually treated in silos and looked into silos. So we brought together to just one map federally registered apprenticeships, data about them, data about higher education institutions providing short-term workforce training, data about nonprofits, also like training, offering workforce training, shorter forms, and organizations that are eligible to receive funds from the most important federal legislation on this space, which is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA. And then suddenly with these data aggregated together and completely accessible and open to anyone in the space, think if you are, let's say, an employer or a workforce intermediary, or a public servant, or even like a nonprofit, someone working in the nonprofit sector in this space in the San Diego metro area. I think it really helps to get the insight from this data that, for instance, there is about 120 organizations only in the San Diego metro area offering short-term workforce training, and about 50% of these organizations are actually nonprofits, which is relatively surprising, right? While only 20 of them are eligible to receive funds from WIOA, the main federal legislation funding this sector. And let's say, for instance, another common, let's say, persona in the area, let's say you work and we're an employer in a mid-sized technology company from the area. Having this list in your hands suddenly gives you an idea of who to reach out to, or to which organizations, to which training organizations that we can reach out to have a pipeline of talent that you need to train for your own needs, or a list of potential partners that you can partner with to implement training that you need to reskill or upskill who works for you in the spirit of the work that the Reskilling Lab does. But where we are moving next, right? So part of the work we've done so far in this initiative is as I said, trying to tackle the big questions of, where is this infrastructure of short-term workforce training, which communities are they serving, and how they're serving these different communities. Now we are really curious to explore questions like, what are the occupations that these providers of short-term workforce training are training for? If you think about technology innovation, especially Gen AI, and how it will quickly demand some new skills and render others obsolete, we think it's really important to also look at this sector, at this system of short-term workforce training, to understand where are the opportunities to help train and retrain all of us and American workers overall for these new needs. Personally, I think a big part of that, at least in the beginning, is to try and understand, and it's something that we're trying to do at the Project on Workforce right now. Part of this exercise in active imagination of what AI will create or can create in terms of generating more and better pathways for economic mobility for more people. I think it starts with understanding where it's being adopted right now in the workspace and in education, but not only right now, but also over time. So having a picture of that adoption. And I think another big portion of it, just offering a segue to what I think, David, we also share with you all, is how can we leverage this infrastructure of short-term workforce training to help training people on how to better complement their skills to make the best use of AI for tasks like decision-making, or to communicate better, or for things that will always be heavily human.
On to me. Thank you so much, Nathalie, and my colleagues here. I'm extremely grateful to be here and share some very interesting and I think important work with all of you today. I hope you will excuse my use of assistive technology. I've had a number of wonderful conversations over the past week that has led to a complete revision of what I wanted to share with you all today. And so I'm the product manager and also a researcher at the Harvard Skills Lab, where we build gamified assessment technologies to measure durable skills in the labor market, more commonly, or I guess more recently referred to as soft skills, things like leadership, communication, teamwork, collaboration, et cetera. And so, it's not news that these are the kinds of skills that are extremely important, especially in the context of employability, job growth, and overall career outcomes. But I was personally surprised to find out that we've known this for over 100 years. So research conducted by Harvard, Carnegie Foundation, and Stanford in 1918 concluded that 85% of job success comes from having well-developed soft and interpersonal skills, and only 15% of job success comes from hard technical skills. This has remained true. A recent study in 2021 by the National Association of Colleges and Employers found that employers consistently put durable skills at the top of the list for new hires above hard technical skills. Additionally, the importance of these durable skills is also reflected in the market. So the global durable skills training market was valued at a whopping $23 billion in 2021 and is expected to double to $50 billion in 2027. And this is, I think, partly because of the importance of these skills in the age or the coming age of generative AI, which I'm sure we'll talk in a little bit on this panel. But that being said, the reason why I bring this up is because I wanted to get to the point that over the past 100 years, we have yet to reach industry consensus on how these skills can or should be measured, evaluated, and trained. And we can, this is evidenced anecdotally. I think if I were to ask everyone in this room or even just my colleagues here on this panel to jot down on a piece of paper what a leader looks like, or how can you identify a leader, we might have at least partly or maybe significantly different answers to that question. But as we enter into an age of assured tumultuous with reskilling needs, workforce turnover, and automation, it's becoming increasingly more important to share a common language and a common evaluative practices around these skills that are perceived as being so important. And so at the Skills Lab, we think that part of the reason it has been so challenging to align on the common language and understanding of these skills is due to confounding variables that almost pollute the context of their presentation. So as we know, like leadership in one context might look different than leadership in another context. And so the primary question that we're focused on, therefore, and a question that I think, or we think that when we move towards an answer, we'll have the opportunity to drive the conversation closer to consensus, is what does it mean, and is it possible to build from the ground up an assessment that can capture a context-agnostic presentation of a given durable skill? And so to the end of trying to answer this question, at the Harvard Skills Lab, we run controlled experiments, build gamified assessment technologies that parallel or are directly informed by these experiments, and then establish a feedback loop with deploying these assessments and games at scale in large industry contexts. For instance, Éxito, the largest retailer in Colombia. And so we've had some pretty cool results with our initial work, which we're also a very young lab. But one of the results is an experiment where we were able to develop a approach to identifying team players where we can basically identify a team player by re-randomizing individuals across group performance and control for their task individual skill. So what's left is their contribution to their group. So team player is defined as an individual that consistently elevates group performance over and above their task individual skill. And we'll have a game rolling out in the near future. And then we've also developed a second experiment that develops a theoretical model and game to assess individual variation in the ability to make good decisions about resource allocation. And we found that performance on this assessment predicts individual full-time labor earnings above IQ. So our next focus, naturally, will be to take these durable skills assessments into the context of AI, where we're developing measurement tools to evaluate the skills that are most important to engaging with generative AI. In the coming years, we're hoping to continue to validate this more or less bottom-up, context-agnostic approach to developing durable skills assessments in larger, diverse workplace samples to be able to develop out the most reliable approach to building accurate and skills that reach consensus in the labor market. So thank you.
Awesome, thanks to my colleagues. So I'm playing dual role here of moderator and researcher. And we're only running a little bit behind, which is crazy considering getting to talk researchers to talk for 5 minutes only is quite an accomplishment. So one question I'm gonna pose, and I'm gonna pose this specifically to Eleonora and Nathalie. A big topic here at the conference and a topic that's in the news quite a bit is the value of college. And we know the data do show that a college degree still leads to the highest earnings and wealth creation over time. So why research these short-term training programs, and what role do they play in economic advancement? Eleonora, let's start with you.
Yeah, so that's something that we work with directly. We work a lot with short-term trainings. the role for them in the context of reskilling is really a role that is interconnected with lifelong learning. Again, the nature of work has changed. People do not just have one job for their whole lives, they have many of those. So training is a crucial part of a person's career building that happens throughout time in the career. And for efficiency and several other constraints, these are often short-term courses. For them to be successful, for someone who is already in the labor force, who has already spent some time in the labor force, they must be focused. So companies and training providers must be very precise and sharp with what they're trying to convey. And there are also design features that are very important to work with in order to make sure that the learners are having the best possible experience. And what I mean by this is that the experience of a learner who is already in the labor market is going to be very different from somebody who is studying full-time. And this goes back to what I was mentioning before about the design features that really need to be taken into account in order to make sure that these training programs are effective. In terms of examples, we already see them. So for example, Intel is launching these really interesting boot camps that are 2 weeks long to put people with no manufacturing experience in the manufacturing line. Those seem to be successful right now. We are seeing that these short-term trainings are becoming more and more relevant.
Thanks. Such a great question, and I know like internally and in so many conversations we talk about that all the time. I think as I said in the beginning, we know that college and traditional degrees are important, and this is not an alternative, right? This is not either traditional degrees or shorter term forms of workforce training, but more of a both end. And I think the importance to bring to the picture and to try and have like applied research around short-term workforce training, it stems from the fact that it simply serves a lot of Americans. So we know that over 60% of American workers, they simply don't have a traditional degree. And when we look into specific populations of American workers, this breakdown is even like more pronounced. So over 50% of Latino workers, for instance, do not have traditional degrees. Over 60% of Black workers do not have traditional degrees. So it's really important to also, in complement to traditional degrees, to explore what this sector looks like, who it's serving right now, how well it's serving, what are the occupations that it is training for. And most importantly, because for us, you know, research only means, only have like this deep meaning if it's like can drive change. How can we all think together and as leaders in business, in education, in policy making, how can we improve this sector like further, right? And aside from these like more equity-oriented element and these like data-oriented element, we know that, you know, from, for instance, from polling data, we know that American workers and learners, they are increasingly more interested in forms of training that is shorter, that is swifter, that is more connected to work, that is more affordable. That's really important. And we also know from labor market data that not only traditional degrees, but a whole universe of post-secondary training is increasingly needed for jobs, good jobs that are increasing in demand. So I think this is part of the picture and the big whys why we are the Project on Workforce, besides doing work on traditional degrees and the role of college in good career trajectories. We also look at short-term workforce training.
Great, thank you both. And I'll just add, it as Nathalie was saying, it's not an either or, it's a both and. So the next question I'm going to pose to you, David, and I might take a crack at it myself after, because it's so important to the work we do, which is around equity. And you know, part of our goal is to really move the needle to advance equity in the workforce in education. So can you talk a little bit about the role of assessments, particularly around durable skills in advancing equity? How is this moving the needle?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love this question because it gets to something that I'm really passionate about, which is increasing the surface area kind of the signal that you can use to evaluate a candidate And I think assessment is a really unique device to reduce the bias, the personal anecdotal understanding of what that signal is. So what do I mean by that? An assessment inherently, it can be biased in a meaningful sense on like the training data or like how people come from different backgrounds to take that assessment, but it is not a person that has bias. Whereas an individual's, for instance, perception of a degree or other kinds of signals might have this inherent bias. So I think assessments, if you can get them right, are a very effective way of moving towards more equity or reducing bias in the evaluative process.
Thank you so much. I think that's important, particularly as we think about the skills-based hiring movement and think about reducing our reliance on degrees. I'll take a brief stab at this from the career navigation angle because I think this is particularly important. You know, we have a lot of training options out there. We have a lot of jobs available, but not everyone has the resources, has those kind of the information, capital, skills, training access to take advantage of them, to learn about them and capitalize on them. And so I think it's important, particularly as working lives get longer, as Eleonora was saying, the average person has 12 careers now over their lifetime. And so people need equal access to the resources, to the sports, to the structures that'll allow them to take advantage. And if we just focus on the training or we just focus on the job and not how people find them and how people secure them, I think we're missing a piece of the equity puzzle. So our next question is around generative AI, because we're at ASU+GSV, and it wouldn't be complete if we didn't. And so everyone has kind of mentioned it a little bit, but I'm hoping we can each take maybe 1 minute to talk about the impact of generative AI in your space, the space that you're researching, specifically so around training and durable skills. Why does it matter? What do you think is going to happen? Eleonora.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I work at the Data Digital Design Institute, and this is something that we spend a lot of time thinking about. In terms of reskilling, I see AI helping us in 3 ways. The first one is matching. So managers spend a lot of time making sure that workers get access to the right training. Gen AI is going to help them make this process quicker and better, and going to make sure that there is no talent hoarding. And this is going to free up resources for managers to do more of the 1,000 different things that they also have to do on top of this. The second part is personalization. Every worker has a different profile and different needs. AI is allowing us to personalize people's pathways to an extent that was not possible so far. And finally, it's complementarity. This is a different angle. It's about how do you train people with AI. But if we do that right, we are going to be unlocking lots of potential there and hopefully space for further innovation.
I'll take a step back, like to say that I think the impact of AI on the work and on learning, it's really, I think we all can agree with that. It's not set in stone, so it's basically what we all collectively will do of it, right? So if we're all setting ourselves in a direction where AI will be like a multiplier of opportunities, I think that would take a good exercise of active imagination of how AI can be used to create more opportunities for more people and not the opposite, right? But thinking specifically about shorter forms of workforce training, I think this exercise of active imagination will take us to think beyond the obvious. So training people for AI is not only training them for data science or for data analysis or for writing code or generating or creating AI itself or larger models itself, but also to complement the skills they have to ultimately come up with a better result than we could reach alone, right? So I think when we think about shorter forms of workforce training, I think the dream data I would love to have is water, and I think the Reskilling Lab, I think the work we do at the Project on Workforce, I think the Skills Lab will really help us see that more and more over time. Which skills are that? And where it's been trained for, and where there is potential for more training to be more readily available for more people, so that these skills aren't scarce, but actually shared among like as many people as possible, meaning that more and more people will be able to leverage our unique human skills with Gen AI to work better and to produce more results and to be more effective and to create more opportunities.
So I think that this is a question that's extremely exciting to me because there's a huge overlap, obviously, with durable skills and generative AI, given the modality of engaging with generative AI, written communication, now verbal communication, et cetera. So I think it's definitely amenable to, an investigation of what are those durable skills that matter. But I also think specifically it's important to kind of going back to our previous topic on like the equitability discussion. It's important to make fast progress to discover what are the skills that matter for effectively leveraging generative AI as quickly as possible. Because as we've seen, the outsized returns on productivity increases that will exacerbate inequities at probably a rate that we haven't seen before. So I'm very excited about contributing to that work in trying to understand what those skills are and then how we can disseminate that knowledge equitably as well and accessibly.
And I'll just add that generative AI could transform career navigation as well. As Eleonora mentioned, the personalization of pathways presents a huge opportunity here, as well as the ability to scale and complement coaching. We know career coaching is incredibly effective, but we have a shortage of career coaches. And so there are a variety of experimental tools out there to help scale, use generative AI to provide personalized coaching. I will say, the research shows that the trusting relationship between the coach and the worker learner is key. So I don't see this replacing coaches as much as augmenting and help scale, and as a tool for coaches as opposed to a replacement. Okay, 3 minutes left. Each person gets one sentence to say what they hope I know, it's a good joke, right? What they hope the audience takes, one takeaway, and what you hope the audience does after this.
Yeah, so what I think is what we still need to crack is a scalability issue. How do we bring training to all the people who need it? And take home, for me, it's two things. First, design your training programs with the manager as a facilitator and make that process work, and design the training programs for the learner and not around the learner, and keep their constraints in mind.
I'll be very, very quick, but I would welcome everyone. I would ask everyone to check our Workforce Almanac data portal, workforcealmanac.com, and take a look at how is your region served by different forms of short-term workforce training. Where is training missing? Where it could be improved? And how are your communities served? And I think I'll give another one, action item, which is like part of our own like ethos. How do we translate what we do for different audiences, right? It's a big part of what we do like every day. How, from our like perspectives and from the places where we speak, we make sure that we are able to talk not only to educators, but to educators, to business leaders, to policymakers, to try and all together move the needle towards creating more, a future of work that has more and that creates more and better pathways for more people.
Awesome. I'll try to be super quick. I think what I hope you all take away is just to take measurement seriously when you're looking at understanding the skills that are important in your hiring or other kinds of decisions. At our lab, we like to talk about the work that we're doing as the hard work of measuring soft skills. And, it is hard work. And it's my hope that, everybody just takes a very good look at the measurements, tools, and assessments that you bring into your contexts. So.
And my last plug, which unites all our work, is bridge silos. If you're an employer, talk to the educators in your community. If you're an educator, talk to the employers. Make sure you're building programs that are in demand for demand jobs. And if you're a policymaker, be talking to the educators and the employers, and be talking to the workers and the learners, be designing around them, with them, for them. 8 seconds left. Thank you all so much. Sorry we didn't get to questions, but we'll hang around.